The Minnesota Wild just became even more terrifying as their top Russian prospect, Danila Yurov, has just signed his entry-level deal. And not only does he have an NHL-ready shot, NHL-ready everything, some great defense, it makes the Wild a perfect fit moving forward, as there are rumors of him filling the one spot they need in the roster. Plus, he has a connection to Kaprizov. There is a bunch of amazing stuff coming out of this Danila Yurov saga, and it does make the Wild very scary. We're going to dive into the contract, what was signed, some details of it, and some projections that show he's probably going to be better than a lot of people, especially non-Wild fans, think. All that coming up on this episode of Wild Digest. But before we get into the video, quick reminder, almost 90% of you are still not subscribed. We're so close to 1,500 subscribers, and we have the goal of 2,000 by the end of May. We got 2 weeks left. You guys have been supporting like crazy. Thank you so much. Kirk, it happened. It officially happened today. Danila Yurov signed his 3-year entry-level deal with the Minnesota Wild starting in the 2025-26 season. And look, we could talk for ages about Danila Yurov. How are you feeling, man? Like, just finally seeing his name put to paper, the guy who was a stud as an age 20 player in the KHL, finally coming to add some extra offense to this team.
I think you said it best, Josh. Being able to finally see him now on the Minnesota Wild in a contract, be able to see him and know confidently that he'll be over, I think it's something that every Wild fan has been waiting for. The Wild are not known for their top prospects very much, but now that we have a lot of these younger guys coming in, like Danila Yurov, I would say probably the most unknown top prospect in the league. I would argue that because people aren't thinking about the Wild prospects. They know they have a good system, but when it comes to it, it's just a lot. But Danila Yurov, as you see by these highlights, he is an incredible player, and he has an NHL-ready talent. He is ready to be over here, and even though the KHL is a very good league, the NHL is that next level. It's that next step. And being able to show that you are a competitive player and one of the best players in that league, you are ready for the NHL. I think the Wild saw that as well. It was only the other day. We were talking about him possibly being a centerman, and we're going to jump later on in this video about that and stuff. But Danila Yurov finally is going to be with the Minnesota Wild on this team.
Yeah, these Russian prospects, you never really know, but we saw he terminated his contracts. There were some little things they were trying to work out, and Michael Russo does reveal a lot of those in the article, a link down below, and some tweets. But he has a clause throughout his entire contract, actually. He has a European clause that if he ever at any point doesn't make the Wild, he can opt to go back to Russia so he doesn't have to go to the AHL. Honestly, fair enough, and his deal ranks 5th among all players in the 2022 draft, even though he was picked 24th. But if I go back here, he's going to be making $950,000 per season, a $95,000 signing bonus. When he's in the NHL, has a chance to earn a max A bonus for a forward. So look, Yurov is amazing, Kirk. The contract, it looks good. It's good for him as well. It's like, listen, I'm not going to Iowa. I'd rather go back to Russia. Fair enough. But the big thing with him is just like the strengths versus weaknesses. And again, in this article, it goes back to what Scott Wheeler said when he ranked Yurov as the Wild's second best prospect behind only Boyum. He said, look, if you were to fill up 2 buckets with his tools, one for the strengths, one for the weaknesses, and place them on a scale, the bucket with his strengths in it would be overflowing, and the one with his weaknesses would be near empty. He plays hard and fast, pushes tempo, strong and balanced skater. Kirk, he goes on to say how he's an unbelievable give-and-go player. And look, we see the highlights. We see that NHL-ready shot, but also how he can create offense while often looking like he's not even giving that much effort, which is an incredible skill because you know he's giving it his all, but he makes the game look easy. And look, I know we're going to dive into some of his KHL stuff again, but just to give fans an idea, like if you haven't been paying attention to Yurov, this guy right away, Kirk, from day one, will be one of the most solid players. And when you have a guy that rarely makes mistakes, that on its own is noticeable, let alone the offensive talent.
Yeah, and there's so many open spots on the Wild right now for to fill him in. Now, I don't think any of us really know just yet where he will go, but his talents have really allowed him to go anywhere in this line. You could put him on the first line, try him out at center if you want between Boldy and Boldy and Kaprizov in this case. I don't know why Zuccarello's on the first line, but then you have other options of putting him on the wing, maybe even with Kirill Kaprizov still. You want to put him on the second line with Matt Boldy? You can do that. There's so many options the Wild have with him right now, due to his talents, because of how good he is and how well-rounded of a player he is. You don't have to rely on him to go out and make a mistake or whatnot. You don't have to expect that. He's been a player that has been able to show that, I'm ready to go. I've been able to do this in the past. You can trust me in these scenarios, power play, penalty kill, whatever it may be to start off with. And I think the Wild are going to explore all avenues to start off with at least. We've seen some good defense from him. We've seen a wicked shot out of him. We've seen some great playmaking ability, and he's going to bring all of that to the table. And I'm very excited just to see the avenues the Wild take with him. I think there's going to be many different options, and I really have no idea how they're going to start him off with, because I think I can name 5 or 10 different ways I would put him in this lineup, and I don't see any of them being bad.
That's the big thing with him. Like, again, I don't really care. Like, he's going to be able to lift other players up, but he's also going to be able to, in theory, match the high-end skill. And again, you look at his numbers, and you're like, 12 points in 59 games there, like, after he was drafted, with 0 points in the KHL in this draft year, when he dominated the MHL. You're like, okay, I mean, that's maybe kind of normal for a young player. Then he just lit it up for 49 points in 62 games. But then he made it clear he wasn't coming back, got his playing time diminished. That's why his production went down this year, though his goal scoring was still there. 13 goals in 46 games is pretty good. And I got to remind you guys, Danila Yurov, at the time, last year, set the record for most ever points in any KHL season where a player is 20 years old or younger, and he had 49 points. Now, that was tied this year by Ivan Demidov of the Montreal Canadiens. He did it in his age 19 season, but still, Yurov and Demidov are the only two people ever in the KHL to have 49 points in an age 20 or younger season. That's how good this guy is, right? How good he was, how fast his development is. But Kirk, the one thing that I think makes this so scary is the idea of him playing with Kaprizov for many years to come. And actually, if you look here, this is courtesy of Byron Bader, Hockey Prospecting, posting stuff like this. You look at these charts, like the draft -1 year, pretty comparable to Kaprizov. The draft +0, like his draft year, better than Kaprizov. The D+1, a little bit worse, but the D+2, that 49-point year we had last season, very similar to what Kaprizov projected as. And again, this year is really the outlier in the trend, because the KHL, Kirk, as we know, is so up and down, depending what you say, what you do. You might get more or less playing time. The politics are everywhere. But if you see there in those draft year comps, I mean, look, not to say that those are like, what's going to happen? Mike Bossy, Vincent Damphousse, Steven Stamkos, Nail Yakupov, Pat Falloon, and like now his full comps closer to Pierre-Marc Bouchard. Love that name. Alexis Lafreniere. But you can see, like, if you just take that draft +2, you look at what Kaprizov did, you look at what Yurov did, they're not that far apart, which is kind of insane for me to even think about. Obviously, a different style of game. I don't necessarily expect Yurov to be the offensive dynamo that Kaprizov is, but what I'm saying, Kirk, is like, especially for fans who haven't paid attention to Yurov, and like you said, probably the most unknown top prospect in the league. A lot of fans outside Minnesota haven't even heard of him. But looking at these numbers, watching him play, this guy is going to be legitimately scary, whether we play him at center or the wing. I don't think it even really matters.
It don't at all. Wherever they put him, I trust the Wild to do so correctly, because it's very tough to be able to mess this up right now, at least at this point. But when we go back to the Kirill Kaprizov comparisons as well, you're thinking about those two. You look at Kirill Kaprizov, pretty similar scenario, came over a lot later. What would have happened if we saw Yurov stay over later? Would he have gotten to that Kirill Kaprizov level? There's that level of uncertainty, like you said, with the KHL, that you can never really predict anything. There's so much politics and whatnot going on in that. If you say you're going over to the NHL, they're just not going to play you. There's so many things that you have to be careful of when you're playing over there if you want to get further with your career. But, even with this Kaprizov similarity, even with the stats that you see here of how comparable they have been throughout their early careers, there's going to be a lot of similarities that we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of improvement for Yurov over these next few years. And playing with Kaprizov, even just being on the same, line, whether it may be a practice, whether it's in a game, he's going to learn a lot from. And I think that we're very, very lucky to be able to see this. I think we're very lucky to be able to see the Wild start to bring in these young guys, because we know there's going to be some moves made this year. We know there's going to have to be some other moves. So being able to bring in someone you have grown in-house, bring them someone they're familiar with in Kirill Kaprizov, it's going to be a very, very dangerous team when these guys get underway. And if they start playing together, the rest of the NHL better look out. And I don't even know what to say else about that.
No, it's unbelievable. Like, we talk about all the acquisitions that we could be making this offseason. I mean, we're hearing that Besser might even be more unlikely than we thought, and hearing all these trade rumors for Rossi, but like, this could very well end up being the best acquisition of the offseason. It's just bringing in our own prospect. And like, there's a world where he is better than anyone the Wild trade for or sign heading into next year. I'm not going to hold him to that. I think that's a pretty high expectation to put on a young prospect, but I'm just saying, the stats show that this guy could very well be an incredible player right away. I wouldn't shock me to see him in the top 6, but look, we want to hear what you guys think. I think this makes the Wild even scarier than ever. Leave your thoughts down below, because that'll do it for this episode of Wild Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. 2,000 by the end of May. We got 2 weeks left. We're getting so close. Thank you all for watching every single day. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Kirk Day. We'll catch you in the next one.